So I fell backwards into strategy. Originally, I wanted to be a photography major. Went to college, art school, and a semester in, I didn't take a single photo. I asked what gives, and they said we accidentally signed you up for advertising. And so I was put under an art direction major. I was too much of a perfectionist to do that, but in that semester, I was introduced to the director of strategy at our school, and I fell in love because I was able to set up the four corners and create the condition for creativity and be a part of that. But I never had to put the final pixel in place because that was the maddening part for me. I also appreciated the need for perspective in the role. And I had always grown up a little different. I was homeschooled for most of my life. I didn't follow the same curriculum as everybody else. So I tended to have a slightly different kind of viewpoint or way in to a situation or kind of an observation. And so that was all of a sudden a superpower. I was like, yes, this makes a lot of sense for me. And I was able to turn that into what is now my strategy career. So it was that plus just hustle. When I did decide to commit to advertising, I remember the moment I did it. I was walking under an overpass in San Francisco, and I said, "Okay, Paris, if you're going to do this, you got to commit all the way." And I changed everything I did. I started dressing up for class and really got into the mindset. And doing so impressed all of my teachers. It got me several internships, and that was kind of my springboard into the ad world. Was I got hired straight out of school just because I was so hungry.
Those epiphany moments are so great because you can always remember like where you are, like what
Yep.
led you to think that, and like everything changes after that moment. I've had a couple of those, and I yeah remember everything about that.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You talked about the homeschool piece making you
Mhm.
feel like you grew up different, or maybe even like an outsider. I don't know.
Mhm.
I I have noticed that in several um, people who are strategists. But and I think I know what your answer would be, but I'm curious why you think that is. Why is it that having a different perspective or feeling like an outsider or feeling like you're different lends yourself to being somebody who can articulate and work through a strategy?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And yeah, I think you will know where I'm going to go with this. But what strategy is, in my opinion, anthropology for business. And one of the key pieces of anthropology is you study a tribe, right, for a year, but you always go away at the end of the day and retire to your own kind of dwelling and collect your thoughts. You never actually sleep within the tribe and fully join them. If you were, they call that going native, ironically. But if you go native, you lose your objectivity, your inability to have a true insight, right? So, because of that, because of the kind of objectivity that you have with homeschooling or maybe growing up a little different, you have that outsider perspective. You've never fully gone native. And so they call this, participant observation or being able to kind of put on a hat and then take it off again. And I think that's the superpower of strategies, being able to do that. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of created the muscle memory early on for myself and a lot of other strategists where they like are very curious. They'll get into new hobbies or groups. They're often social butterflies, and it's because they like doing that kind of new thing over and over again.
Yeah, and what you said relates exactly to what our clients are asking for. You know, when they come to us, especially with like a brand strategy problem, sometimes with
Yeah.
integrated marketing too, but it's like they're so close to the problem. They see all the
Hmm.
complexities, and it's just like overwhelming. They don't know how to take this and like get it down to a concise thing, or have it stop changing from day to day, week to week based on something they hear. And then when we come in with that different perspective, it's like we can see it becoming like so refreshing and like, oh yeah, of course, right? Like in some ways it's obvious, but they were never going to get there on their own, right?
Yep. Yeah. One of my favorite moments in a recent pitch was, "Why should we hire you? You have no experience in our category." And the response was, "That's exactly why you should hire us, because we have a fresh perspective and we aren't kind of burdened by all that legacy knowledge." So, yeah, no, I totally agree.
And how did that go?
I think they hired us.
Right. Yeah.
And then that was the cool part, was that all of a sudden became a competitive advantage amongst a client that was, looking at all these other kind of very specialized agencies. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting because we were talking with another client the other day, and we showed them 3 case studies that were completely in their wheelhouse. And
Hmm.
at the end of it, I made sure to say, like, so we're not going to mail this in for you. We don't assume that because these are so similar to you that we're going to do another cookie cutter, because that cuts both ways, right?
Yep.
You can be afraid that they don't understand your industry. You should also be afraid if they understand it too well, because like you said, they're too inside and they're
Yep.
just like, well, we solved this problem before, just give them the same one and slap their name on it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Another kind of important part of strategy, in my opinion, is pushing past the obvious and getting onto the edge of what is maybe uncomfortable and new. And that's where you set the creative team off on. You go, okay, here's all the things that we've acknowledged. Here's the well beaten path. Now here's the unexplored territory. It's the desolation wilderness of creativity. And that's what we want our team to get into. We're just kind of the wayfinder to get you there.
It's more interesting work to do, and it's more interesting to the audience. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody knows how this stuff is supposed to look and sound, and when you do something that's a little different, and you tilt their perspective, that's when stuff gets noticed. It's
Yeah.
the obvious is the obvious ideas have you just have to get those out so you can move past them and not be
Yep.
satisfied with something that sounds like a good idea, because there's something that's so much better and more interesting beyond that once you can get past it.
Things take time, right? Everybody's first, or your first idea is everybody's first idea. And so, how do we go through? I always look at creative thinking as a set of doors, hallways, and rooms. And the more doors you can open up and the more rooms you can discover, the more interesting places you get. But if you have 10 minutes, you have a day to solve an issue, there's no possible way to open up enough doors, right? So, I think that's part of why strategy and creativity should be given the right amount of time, because otherwise you're going to get tunnel vision and just reach for what's closest.
Yeah, I also I'm a big proponent of trying to trick your unconscious mind to doing some of the hard work for you. And you know
Yeah.
how, because if you're sitting there just trying to force it out, have a good idea, it's not going to happen. That's what that time is all about, right? Is you got to let it marinate. The back of your brain will figure those things out for you. So you got to, you know, if you're short on time, you can still hack it. Get up, walk away from it, let your blood flow a little bit, let your mind put those pieces together when you're not thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in some of your previous roles leading up to joining Native, what were some of the things that you learned in particular or really enjoyed about those places, or knowledge that you gained that you're able to bring to the table today? Are there things that stand out as like, man, that's the place where I learned this, or that mentor really taught me this?
A couple of moments stand out. One of them, I was fairly junior in a large holding group agency, and I was super intimidated. And I was kind of paralyzed. And my mentor at the time, she noticed it. And what she did was she forced me into situations and gave me a seat at the table that normally I wouldn't have that opportunity, and encouraged me to speak up. And the only wrong answer is you not saying anything, and to get it out. And what that did was it immediately trained me to start speaking my mind, throwing ideas out there, not being afraid to be wrong. And it got noticed by the president of the agency or the CMO. And all of a sudden, you feel like you are so much more qualified because they actually hear you. And it's just through exposure and opportunity. So that was, to me, the real learning was, never be afraid to speak up. Don't belabor it, but share your piece, because you never know, that might be a tipping point or a door to a new idea.
I've been of I've been at shops where you could just look around and see people edit themselves, or they'd almost apologize before they
Hmm.
even said their point of view. I thought,
Hmm.
this is not the way. This is not the way to good work. And
Yep.
I think we've always tried really hard to make sure we have that culture where people don't self-edit and they feel comfortable sharing, no matter what their role is. I
Yep.
think it's helped us have better work and different perspectives as best we can with how we're staffed today.
Yeah, I'd say another thing that I've been grateful for is managers and agencies that have allowed for cross capability thinking. And we do that here at Native too, right? It's not get in your box and do the strategy or do the creative work. It's contribute where you think there's a gap or an opportunity. And that has allowed me to sit with media planners and learn their world better, or to dig into analytics and get smart on conversion rates and what's going to change, So I think that is so important in any agency scenario, and especially in this day and age, because we're moving too fast to sit in a vacuum. And we need to always be looking for ways to push the boulder forward, and help that client achieve success.
There's a lot of driven people here at Native, and I'm always curious about what it is that motivates each person, because it's unique for each person. What about you? What gets you up every day and makes you push forward versus just mailing it in?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the reasons why I moved to Native, was to see an impact in a client's business. My favorite four-letter acronym is ROAS, and to see the real return that we're creating for clients. It's not just doing a bunch of work and throwing it into a black hole that is a corporate kind of shell. A lot of clients that we work with are small, medium-sized, organizations, and that's where the real progress happens, because there's just so much opportunity to be had. So I would probably go as far to say is I don't want to work for a Fortune 500 company anymore, because I know that things get drugged down so hard, and that it's so hard to see the needle move, that that's not gratifying for me. So yeah, I think that's really what's the driver, and why I wake up is to see the new kind of progress report and how the clients are happy because it's moving their numbers in the right
Yeah, there size isn't everything, but there's something to it. And we talk a lot about the size of our organization, and we talk a lot about the
way.
size of the ideal clients. And I've always been drawn to those mid-tier clients. You can just get more done. Um, they move quicker. The work can get out there faster. There's just fewer layers. And so it's not that we're opposed to working with enterprise companies. We're just a little suspicious of it. It doesn't
The right
always allow.
condition.
Yeah, it doesn't always allow for the best work.
Yeah.
Now, typically when we do get hired by an enterprise level company, it's because we're like this squad that's going to come in, solve a problem, and that these big organizations couldn't quite figure out. And so they're like, we love your speed. And it's
Yeah.
funny, there's times even when they're like, can you keep up? I'm like, you won't be able to keep up with us. Like, I promise you that, you know?
Exactly. As long as we're given a different license to operate, which is usually the case, like you say, then that's great. And we usually run circles around any incumbent agency. Like, wait, what just happened? You just set a whole new level of expectations.
Yeah. That's the fun part. But yeah, I agree. It's like those challenger brands who are in that kind of second stage growth. Man, that's the
Yep.
best place to be. That to me is, I work there all day long.
Yep. Exactly.
If I was to ask everybody at Native, um, what's Paris's strength? What's his superpower? What do you go to him for? What is he uniquely qualified for? What do you think their answers would be?
Oh man. Outside of talking about fishing or my lawn,
Right.
I,
That
I
probably is answers 1 and 2. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I would hope that they would say that Paris's superpower is the ability to jump into the work and help sharpen the thinking, to help get the deck from 100% to 110% by maybe challenging some of the observations or implications that we have listed, and getting the team to think a little bit differently about it, right? Asking what if in a way that inspires new ideas versus squelches them. And so that's my hope, is to distill and then all of a sudden kind of uncover a nugget and go, hey, what if? What if we turned it into this? And then leaving the team to either take that and run or tell me no. And that's totally fine too. I think the ability to be humble and flexible and understanding that I'm not the smartest one in the room, but maybe I can be an agitator of the brilliance that's already there.
Well, we heard someone say that yesterday. Basically, we were at show and tell, and they said, "Here's the brief that we took, and here's the insight." And I think the quote was, "This is a springboard if I've ever seen one." So here we go.
That's right.
That's what you want.
Exactly.
That's cool. So you've been here, started at gosh, it feels like longer than it's actually been, but some long months here recently. They're in quarantine, but
Yeah.
what have been some of your, I don't know, some of the moments where you might, go home and tell the missus or tell your friends or something like this is what I do at work, whether it's projects or just hangouts or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's been a couple of interesting moments. I think the most rewarding times for me have not just been about the work, but about the agency and how I've helped contribute to new processes and ways of approaching the work. So in the past, places I've worked, the brief was sacred, it was untouchable. But when I came to Native, you gave me the opportunity to revisit the briefing process, right? And take the experiences I've had at 12 different agencies and infuse them into ours and say, here's maybe the stellar approach that we could take and get everybody aligned and riffing on it. And all of a sudden, by the end of the process and the work sessions, everybody was super stoked and already kind of adopting. So to me, that was one of the highlights, was to revamp a process that wasn't just for process sake, but it made the work genuinely better. And it kind of changed the way we approach new projects. So that was cool. I would also say there's been a couple clients where we started off and we said, okay, well, it's kind of a sleepy category. Let's try and push this and see what we can do. And the work resulted in something that was unprecedented. The clients were just completely stoked about where we took it. It turned maybe a sleepy category into something that was all of a sudden very exciting. Like, how do you make somebody almost cry when you talk about a construction company? What? Like that was a whole new world. And it was because we dug into really interesting insights and did the homework. And I think that's a really rewarding piece. Similarly, like, how do you talk about baseball bats in a way that's going to be engaging and fun? But all of a sudden you get to a tight brief and you get the creative team jamming on different directions and really digging into the audience and what makes them tick. And we turned it into something really special, and the clients were ecstatic. So I think it's moments like that where we see the work turn a whole category or a whole kind of brand into something totally unexpected.
I'm so happy to hear that, because I always felt like I was alone in the industry. I always enjoyed the categories that were the sleepy ones or the brands that were not sexy at all, because I felt like, oh, I'll make a difference here, versus, working for like this, top name brand that you see commercials on every day. Like, that didn't appeal to me at all. Like, what am I going to do there? I'm going to be handcuffed and just doing production work. But the sleepy category to me is just like, the bigger the opportunity. And also the client is just, usually like, oh my gosh, we didn't even think it was going to get to this level, because they haven't seen it before in their category. That, to me, that is fun.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's always been a true thing. But now the opportunities, I think, are far and fewer between. I remember being a student in ed school and everybody had to do spec work. And the hot brand back then was vitamin water. It had just launched. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's water. It's got vitamins. What is going on? So everybody's work always revolved around like vitamin water. And I did my project on Bic lighters. And people were like, what? Why would you do a Bic lighter strategy and campaign? I'm like, but think about it. It's so boring. There's so much interesting opportunity there. So I think I took that finding, and the project was awesome. It went really well. It actually landed me an internship. But I learned, like, at that moment, like, look for the boring and turn it into something special. You're usually
Absolutely.
surprised.